Hello, everyone, and welcome to lesson 1.9. And today we're going to talk about social sustainability, and this is continuing our global development unit in global politics. So, by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to describe what social sustainability is. You should be able to explain some ways to address social sustainability, and you should be able to explain how empowering women can encourage social sustainability. As with all things, we need to make sure we know what we're talking about first. So let's make sure we define social sustainability. Social sustainability aims to reduce factors that threaten human social well being. So we're trying to remove any obstacles that would prevent human beings from becoming better, just becoming better citizens, better humans, and bettering your life. There is absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever with you trying to improve yourself and make your life easier and better for you and your family and friends. So that is what social sustainability is trying to do, is allow people to have that opportunity to better themselves as they wish. So what are some ways that we can do to achieve this? Well, there's a little list here. We can address poverty. I mean, that goes without saying. Addressing poverty, actually recognizing it, acknowledging it, and then trying to put parameters in place to prevent people from going into poverty, that's what we need to do. We need to reduce corruption. That's across the board. It doesn't matter from, political institutions, economic institutions, whatever. Reducing corruption is always going to provide sustainability, no matter if it's economic, environmental, social, religious, whatever. I mean, it's all going to be reducing corruption is a good thing. Emphasizing social justice. Well, thankfully, you all are students at White so that's a good thing. If we emphasize social justice, that is what's really going to help us address some social sustainability problems. Because addressing social justice or trying to bring social justice to people is part of social sustainability, because if you are a socially just society, then that in and of itself is going to help provide social sustainability. We should also have improved healthcare and improved education. That is universal throughout the entire globe. Even in places where they have top-notch healthcare systems and education systems, they also can still improve. So that kind of backs up the age-old mantra that you should be able to improve anytime. There's always room for improvement. And then lastly, we go right back to this old thing again about empowerment of women. Because by empowering women, you have to remember women are half of the global population. And so if you've got half the global population and then probably half of that at least feels some type of second-class citizenship, that's literally axing out, a considerable, sizable population chunk of our planet that does not have the same equality or access to things just because of their sex and gender. So we're going to spend some time talking about the empowerment of women, because this is highly important, and it is something that is required for us in this particular unit, is to talk about the empowerment of women, because it is a global sustainability goal, a millennium goal that was established, was empowerment of women. So we do need to address it. Now, first of all, we need to talk about, gender roles. And of course, gender roles are the behaviors that are associated with being a, quote, man or a, quote, woman, and are influenced by culture. So you have to think, in some cultures, like we know, for example, in some cultures it is perfectly okay for two men to hug each other or two men to kiss each other as a greeting or something like that. But however, in some other cultures, like here in the United States, people, automatically make assumptions about men when they do that. Same thing with women. It's in other countries, it's perfectly okay for women to do X, but here in the United States, people might be shocked by that. And it's because our culture has dominated what we say is considered quote unquote masculine and considered what is quote unquote feminine. So just keep that in mind, that these gender roles are behaviors that are associated with that, and that all of those things are predicated by or dictated, if you will, by culture. Now, globalization does influence social sustainability by doing these several things. First, introducing new ideas about roles for men and women. So for doing things like, for example, sharing with people that, yes, it's okay for women to own their own business. It is okay for a woman to be in charge. And for her to be I'm the one person that makes decisions. And I'm not a man, but a woman. And on the flip side of the same coin, it is perfectly okay for a man to be a for a man to be a nurse. It is okay for a man to be a teacher, which these here in the West, or at least here in the United States, these are all traditionally female jobs, that, according to culture. But who cares? I mean, well, maybe some guy would like to also make clothes. That's perfectly fine. There's a lot of male clothing designers out there that are a lot wealthier than me, and I'm sitting here teaching. So, we have to do some better jobs on introducing new ideas that both men and women can do other things besides the traditional roles. We need to create new opportunities not previously available. So if there are men that want to go into a nursing profession and they don't have access to that in the country, then we open that door for them and allow them. But if there's women that want to own their businesses and they're not allowed in this country, we need to open the door for them to be able to do that so they can be successful. And we should introduce new technologies, medical services, and cultural norms, such as the idea of contraception. And of course, that is very much a hot topic because contraception, does bring in the idea of religion. And so that should be religion. And when we're looking at religion, that's a whole different entity in and of itself, because religion is very, very personal. And so people do have some deeply held beliefs about contraception based on their religion. But when you look at the healthcare and the science side of it, they do believe that if we introduce, contraception to certain places and access to it, and along with new medical technology, that will help the global South improve. And of course, a lot of the aspects of global politics are impacted by gender roles. So keep in mind that, a lot of the discussions that are happening, all the treaties that are made are largely done by men. The talking is done by men still to this day. Now, women are getting more and more access to it, but nothing like it should be based on current global population. Now, issues like literacy, migration, sexual violence, and disease, all of those things are factors that impact women on our planet as well as men, but the impact on men, women, and children different because of cultural norms associated with the role that men, women, and children play. So when we look at things like literacy, some cultures only allow men and boys to get access to literacy. That's not empowering women. Migration, some places will, we're seeing that with, should we let women and children in from refugee countries and not the men? And, those are all those different things. And the thing we're doing with children, in terms of like at the border and things like that those children have, I don't say access, but they're more possible that they're going to get infected with disease or things like that. There's the possibility of sexual violence that could be happening on these children at the border and things like that. So understand that issues like literacy, migration, sexual violence, and disease all impact men and women and children differently, and a lot of it is based strictly on cultural norms and mores. Now, to further encapsulate all the stuff about empowerment of women, take a look at this first little thing here. According to the World Bank, women do 70% of the world's work, but earn 10% of the world's income. Right here and right now, that makes me just want to stop and be like, huh? But that's huge. 70% of the work is done on this planet by women, and they get 10% of the money. There's a whole, that's some kind of new math. I don't know, but that's some bad math. But this leads to greater poverty. Well, duh. It also leads to slower economic growth and lower standard of living for the entire community. Think about that. 70% of the work in this planet is done by women, but they only get 10% of the income for it, but they're doing the bulk of the work. Of course, this is going to create greater poverty and slower economic growth because these women are tired and they're not getting adequately paid. So it begs that question. Well, why are we not doing better by women? Well, that's something that we need to work on, empowering women. And it's okay for women to have power. It is perfectly okay. Just want to make sure everyone knows that. So to address some of these things, the United Nations created something called the Millennium Development Goals, and they were set targets to increase female empowerment by 2015. Now, of course, we're a little bit removed from 2015, but let's take a look at one. Millennium Development Goal number 3 was to promote gender equality and empower women. I mean, there it is, very bold and proud. And the United Nations has said in our global community that we need to promote gender equality and empower women. And that's throughout the entire planet. So the United Nations recognizes this. And so we just need to try and put the systems in place to be able to help empower women so that they can actually live full, sustainable lives. And of course, the UN Millennium Development Goals assumes empowering women will have beneficial effects for all community members. Now, again, this goes back to the whole thing that we were talking about earlier with religion. Because, again, people have deeply held religious beliefs, and some of those religious beliefs do impact the culture of that region, and they do, and even women have some of these deeply held beliefs as well. And again, we have to recognize people's rights to believe as they choose. But we also need to recognize that, empowering women is beneficial, but we have to look at, what does happen to the other members of the community, especially if this is a woman that is in a part of the world where it may not be culturally acceptable or religiously acceptable. So, empowering women does impact the entire community. Because, it just makes sense. If you give women more power, they're going to have the freedom to do things, and they may not be available to do all the things they did before. So it does change the family dynamic, it changes the culture dynamic. So just understand that empowering women does impact the entire community, not just women themselves. So then that brings us to our final point. How do we empower women? Well, empowering women can be achieved through several different ways. So first, educating girls. That start. A woman doesn't just become it's not just born. A woman becomes a woman because, they is a girl, And so when you educate the girls in that they can achieve something more than being a housewife or something like that, if they choose to, it is perfectly okay for a woman if she wants to do that, to be a housewife. That's fine. But educating girls, giving them the same opportunity and access to certain educational opportunities that oftentimes in many places of the world are only reserved for boys. Changing cultural stereotypes and expectations for women. So like I just said, the cultural expectation by many people is that woman stays at home, cooks the dinner, la la la. Well, that was great in 1950. We're now in the 21st century. Many places that cannot happen anymore because we depend on two incomes just to be able to make ends meet in most places. Challenging social norms regarding women, the whole thing about female infanticide, about if you, some countries like China had, one-child policies and where they were, women were considered, not as needed. And so they would just kill female children. And so we need to challenge those social, thankfully it's not a social norm, I don't think, in China, but it may be in some other places. We need to work better on trying to change that cultural norm that it's not okay to just kill, children that are born female. And then allowing women to own businesses and earn equal wages. That's, equal work for equal pay for equal work. It's common sense. That's just how it works. So we need to make sure that women have access to own their own business and they can make a wage. And allow women access to cultural, social, political, and economic positions of power. Just giving them positions of power. You have to remember, women make up 50% of the planet. Why are we not hearing their voices? Because they're not at the table. So we need to pull out the chair for them and give them a seat at the table, because they need to also tell us, hey, this is not going to work for us women, okay? And here's why. So empowering women does improve social sustainability, and this is evidenced by, we have evidence to support this, higher proportions of earnings reinvested in the family. Well, hello. If you have two incomes and the woman is bringing income, and let's say she was actually making the same pay as her husband, think about that. That's going to give that family a lot more spending power. But again, no one seems to think that. 20% increase in child survival when mother controls the household income. Well, yeah. Because you got to think about this. Women have, I guess, in a larger sense, they have a more invested. They carried the child. And so when the child is born, it's like, I carried you for 9 months. I'm hurt. And so, yeah, you're going to make sure that this woman's going to take care of hers. So that makes sense. Less corruption. Empowering women has actually caused less corruption. And the reason being is because, some women can, prevent things or stop things because they had positions of power. So they were able to see something was wrong and they were like, no, we're going to end this corruption right now. And then, of course, women can control their bodies. And if women have the ability to control their own bodies, then it reduces the birth rate because women can decide when and if they want children. It reduces the early marriage rate because women can then decide if they want to get married. There may be some women that, I want to get married at 18. I love my high school boyfriend, la la la. Great, hope it works out for you. But if you're 50 and you're like, hey, I decided I want to get married, kudos to you. It doesn't matter. It reduces the early marriage rate. It allows the woman to make the decision for herself. It reduces HIV infections because women will have access to birth control. And then more girls will finish school and become workers and not just young mothers. So these young women will now be able to actually be contributors to society and help their community grow and improve. And that is our unit, our lesson, 1.9 on social sustainability. So, can you describe what social sustainability is? Can you explain some ways to address social sustainability? And can you explain how empowering women can encourage social sustainability? If you can, pat yourself on the back. You did an amazing job. At this point, find the activity for lesson 1.9, finish that and complete, and then move on to lesson 1.10. Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful day.